season around here, which means it is time to break out those planners and start thinking about what we're going to be doing in that first week of school. The first week of school really is magical. The excitement is palpable. Your students cannot believe they're finally a part of your classroom, and you cannot remember what you did last year on the first week of school. I know this all too well because every year I have to go hunting for last year's plans just to remember what we did. That first week of school is always a blur, which is why I want to show you some of the activities I've got planned for my first week of school. Come plan with me. Whenever I'm beginning to plan my back to school season, first things first, I like to go through my planner and get everything set up in the structure I'm going to be using while I'm planning. So I do things like add my date, I put the subject areas for when they're gonna fall in my schedule, I go in and add in my related arts times, all of these elements that I know are gonna be staying the same every single week. Even though the first week of school for me is normally nowhere near my normal schedule, I wanna make sure that I'm starting to get myself and my students used to these chunks of time. So I'm gonna have an activity during my reading block. Does that mean it's going to be a reading activity in that first week? Not necessarily, but I want to get them used to using these chunks of time. Once I have my planner set up and ready to go, the next thing I'm going to do is go in and fill in my must-dos. These are things that I know I have to do at certain times on certain days. A lot of times these are things that are going to be given to you by your school, expectations that they are looking for to get done in those first days. So for example, our iPads are getting passed out in the afternoon on Tuesday. So I know that's going to be a whole experience. It normally takes about an hour, which is what I have in this chunk of time at the end of day. So iPad pass out is Tuesday, which means iPad setup for me is going to need to fall first thing on Wednesday morning. That's something that really is a non-negotiable. I have to do those things at that time. I also have to give a math pre-assessment, I already know, on this Friday. So I'm gonna go ahead and write that in. I know that's what I'm doing during my math block on that day. Same thing for my related arts. I know I'm going to them on these days at this time, so I go ahead and give them space within my planner, so I will make sure we get to those. Nothing's worse than in that first week of school realizing, oh my gosh, we were supposed to be in PE 15 minutes ago. Some other must-dos that I know are happening during this week. We use a house system, and so we have sorting. I believe my sorting, yeah, this is the place to put it. Our sorting is at 11:45 on the first day of school. So I'm gonna put it in this block of time. Make sure you go through, add all of your must-dos to your planner for that first week of school. My next planning step, now that I have my must-dos down, is I like to go through and think about my favorite activities and lessons that I use within the first week of school. I know that feeling because I do it every year. I look at myself and I go, what did I do in the first week of school last year? It's always a blur. So I've already gone back, looked in last year's plans, looked through last year's resources. So I have a really good idea of what I want to do on these first 5 days of school. So now I'm gonna start building in some of those lessons and let you know what they're gonna look like. On the first day of school, I always like to have an arrival activity for my students, something easy for them to do. Normally it looks like decorating name tags. From there, we jump right into conversations about behavior. That is a huge one for me. My favorite thing to use to talk about behavior, I use the read aloud. We don't eat our classmates. It is such a funny story. It's on our list of back to school read alouds. We don't eat our, and we do a great read aloud activity. Now, this is gonna take a huge chunk of my morning. This is gonna take us all the way up until lunch. I go to lunch at 11 this year. So this is gonna be a huge chunk of our morning, talking about my behavior expectations, how to move through the room, what I'm looking for students to be doing. Those things are essential to talk about in this first week of school. So I'm making sure we're talking about them on the very first day of school. Another activity that I absolutely love to use within the first week of school is our growth mindset resource. This is an amazing resource that's going to help your students be thinking about what their brains can do, all that their brains are capable of. So I'm going to fill in growth mindset at a few different points in my week. It is a 5-day resource. I'm going to start it on the first day in my block that's normally for math time. So I'm going to start with growth mindset there. And then I think the rest of the week, I might actually finish the growth mindset goodies in my spelling and grammar block. I think that'll fit really well with our schedule this week. So growth mindset, all of the resources I'll be using through those remaining days of the week. I'm gonna have this linked up in the cards and down in the description box for you. It's a great tool to use on the first week of school. I'm gonna do a read aloud here as well that kind of lends itself. I have a few favorites. You'll see them pop up on the screen. These are some I love to read to build that idea of growth mindset with my students. Haven't decided which one yet, but we're gonna do a read aloud here as well. As I'm going through and filling in these activities, I'm thinking about things that are not only gonna help me get to know my students, but help my students get to know each other and get to know kind of our expectations in the classroom. Another great example of that is starting to use things that students are gonna be using all year. I am gonna be using our math centers all year in every area of math, which is so much fun. It's great because they follow the same patterns. Students get really, really familiar with the centers and how to complete them. So I'm actually gonna start this week with the back to school centers to kind of start building that mathematician mindset. Bath. She can spell. Back to school centers. So it's 10 centers, and I love using them in this first week of school because it's an awesome time filler. If we finish something early, we can say, oh, let's try a center rotation. But it's all about getting my students used to how they do the centers, where to get the materials they need, how to use their recording books, how to punch your center number on the back once you've completed it. This also gives me time after this first day of introducing it. It gives me time to then start meeting with students and kind of seeing where they're at mathematically before we do this math pre-assessment on Friday. So I'm gonna have my back to school math centers running over these 3 days. And don't worry, it's linked up in the cards and down in the description box for grades 2nd through 5th. All right, let's put in a few more activities that I know are going to be happening within this first week of school. I like to save all of my school supply setup for the very end of the first day of school. This means I've already had the time to go over a lot of my expectations with students early in the day. So by the time we get to school supply setup, I've already answered a lot of their questions that they're going to have about their supplies. So I'm going to take this afternoon time to do our school supply setup. Now, another favorite activity that I'm going to be running this week is the escape room. It is such a fun resource. My students love it every single year. So I'm going to have the escape room running, I think, on Thursday. Now, it takes a good bit of time. I like to do it on paper every year. So I'm gonna have escape room at a few different points in my day so students can kind of pick up and work on it. I might even flip-flop this piece and do my growth mindset lesson in the morning and my escape room lesson, starting the escape room with students after that. We're gonna wait and see on that one. That's the beauty of planning like this. Everything can go in and change. I also am gonna be working on our spelling pre-assessment. I love the 3rd grade spelling curriculum. We also have it available for 2nd grade as well. And the pre-assessment is great because it sets me up to assess students' spelling abilities for the entire first unit. So I'm covering a lot of skills at once. This helps me place them into their spelling groups. Now, you can see I still have spots to fill in, and that is A-okay. I have other activities I love to do. I have a favorite read aloud we do every year called Sharky McShark.
that's a fun one. I have a great craft that goes with it, and it's nice because it's helping students kind of get that idea of how we're going to interact with each other, building that classroom community, and it gives me something to immediately put up out in the hallway, which is really, really fun. I also love the procedures board game. I always save that for the end of the week because by the time we get to Friday, I want my students to have a really good idea of what they are expected to do in my classroom. Playing the procedures board game is an awesome way to kind of check in with them and see where they are at. Now, as we get closer to back to school, this is going to fill up even more, but this is a great starting point. I know which activities I need to start getting ready now, and I know how many chunks of time I still have to work with to find other activities to engage my students in that first week of school.
I think it is so satisfying to have that first week of school all planned and ready to go. If you're looking for any of the resources I shared that I'm going to be doing with my students on our first week of school, make sure you check out all of the links up in the cards and down in the description box. I put them there for you. They're some of my favorite activities, and they truly are go-tos for this back to school season. I hope you guys are ready for another fantastic year in the classroom. I know you're going to do an awesome job. If you're looking for more ideas for beyond back to school season, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We put out new content here every single week, and we would love to have you join our community here on YouTube. We love talking about all things reading, writing, math, grammar, spelling, games, you name it. So come join us here at Not So Wimpy Teacher on YouTube. As always, happy planning